So the Premier League winners have now won the FA Cup as well. The domestic double for Manchester City, a 2-1 win over rivals Manchester United at Wembley, and potentially the second part of a treble with the Champions League final to come next Saturday against Inter. Mark Donaldson alongside Stevie Nicol will be joined by Rob Dawson from Wembley shortly. But City win it 2-1, Stevie. What kind of FA Cup final did we see today?
Well, I think for half an hour we saw why Manchester City are not only double winners after this victory, but going for a treble. You know, they completely and utterly dominated this game for 33 minutes up until Manchester United got that fortunate penalty that brought things level. I mean, an incredible start. What a volley from Gundogan. I mean, dream start doesn't begin to explain it. But the way they played, though, for that 33 minutes, it was completely and utterly one-sided. And obviously, when you have that much domination, you need to try and put the game away. And unfortunately for City, as good as they were, they couldn't put it away. And then they lose the penalty. So, you know, going in at half-time, if you're a United player or fan, you're happy to get off the field and start again on level terms going into the second half.
It was some strike by Ilkay Gundogan. It was the sixth touch of the game, officially timed at 12 seconds now. And only one Manchester United player, Lindelof, got a touch, and he headed it against De Bruyne. And it's just a technique that was world class. And there's not much Man United could do about that as far as not conceding to Gundogan there. But is there anything from the kickoff they could have done better to prevent Gundogan from being in that position?
It's about the second ball. You know, when a ball's just fired forward from the goalkeeper, can you win the first challenge? And if you can't win the first challenge, can you win that second ball? Well, they actually had two other bites at the cherry as well. They didn't win the header from Haaland, and then the header from Lindelof drops into an area, and Gundogan's sitting there waiting, and there's nobody close enough to him. So, look, it's just about a little bit of fortune, no question. A little bit of fortune, the ball ends up at Gundogan, but reading the second ball is key in these situations. And if you don't do that properly, then you give the opposition an opportunity. And my goodness, did Gundogan take that opportunity? As you said, world class, calm as you like, through the laces. De Gea, quite rightly, didn't even bother trying to save it because he wouldn't have got anywhere close to it. Yeah, fantastic start and a superb goal, superb strike.
Yeah, Rodri had a chance after that to make it 2-0. Again, David De Gea just looked and couldn't do much about it, but it hit the side netting. And City up to that point were in complete control. But complete control different from the complete control they had against Real Madrid, wasn't it? Because that was up-tempo. This was different. This was more containment and keeping the ball, but not quite at the same pace because they didn't need to, that they played against Real Madrid in the second leg.
Yeah, of course, United was very deep. And so when you're one up, you don't need to push it. Yes, you want to keep the ball, but you don't need to force it. That's probably a better word. And so that's probably why that little intensity that we saw against Real Madrid wasn't there, because it didn't have to be. They were more interested in trying to be patient, wait for Man United to leave some holes, and then try and take advantage of it. And as I said, unfortunately, they couldn't quite do that. I guess you got to give credit to United. They stayed strong, and after that header from Rodri, there really wasn't an awful lot in terms of even half chances to speak about. At the same time, Man City did push them back. And so really, you got to say that City went about it the right way. Had they tried to force it, as I was talking about, and give the ball over, turn the ball over, then that's kind of what Manchester United were wanting them to do, so that they could then break. Because that's what Man United was all about in this game. Other than the last 10 minutes, when you're a goal behind in a cup final and you're throwing everything but the kitchen sink, you know, they're really looking to get on the break. And so, in some ways, it was smart play from City, keeping the ball and avoiding Manchester United getting a break. Well, certainly a breakthrough football. They got the break with the penalty, no question. we can't argue. Had it been the other end, City would have wanted the penalty and would have gotten it as well. Jack Grealish is unfortunate that his momentum made his arm come up, and the ball did strike his hand. So, as they say in the commentary, in today's game, that is a penalty, and it got United back in the game, which at the time you absolutely can say they didn't deserve it.
Let's head over to Wembley now and bring in Rob Dawson, talking about the penalty, Rob. And technically, it's a penalty 100 times out of 100. It's just horrible these days that that is the way that the law has been written and is interpreted, because the problem here is with the lawmakers who've decided that incidents like that merit a penalty, and that's where we are these days. Hopefully, it'll be changed over the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a very harsh decision. I mean, by the letter of the law, it's a penalty. I'm not quite sure what Jack Grealish can do. He's trying to deal with a ball that's coming over his head. He's twisting in midair, and he's trying to face up to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I'm not really sure what he's meant to be doing with his hands. If his hands aren't in the air, where are they going to go? I think probably it was one of those that Jack will have felt it hit his hand. He'll have known at that point that he was in trouble. But you could tell by the protest afterwards that he felt that it was very, very harsh. And you're right in what you say, that at the time of the penalty, I wasn't really sure where United were going to find a way back into the game. They weren't creating chances. They weren't even creating half chances. And really, a harsh penalty has helped them get back into a game that they looked a little bit lost in. I think, if we were dealing with a result at the end of that where United had won the game because the game had turned on a penalty decision like that, we probably wouldn't have heard the end of it. I think probably in the end, City, the right team, have won because they made their dominance pay and got that second goal. I must say, I think if United had gone on to win it because of that penalty decision, it's one of those decisions that you would have been here talking about for months and months.
Yeah, at half-time in the coverage over in the United Kingdom, Peter Schmeichel said that prior to the penalty, he would have been happy to go in trailing by a 0-0, but then they could have scored, couldn't they? Rafael Varane, Rob, to make it 2-1 and go in ahead. But maybe if it was Marcus Rashford or somebody else, it might have ended up in the back of the net. But it was a little bit of a warning to City that despite all their possession, that United remained a threat.
Yeah, I mean, inside the stadium, the energy inside the stadium turned completely after that penalty. I mean, before that penalty, the United fans were very quiet. The United weren't really having spells of possession. They weren't really managing to string many passes together at all. But when the penalty goes in, the mood inside the stadium changes and the momentum shifts, and all of a sudden United look a little bit more like they're capable of creating chances. And really, throughout the 90 minutes, United's only spell of not dominance, but any kind of threat was in that little period after the penalty. And it was the only time really where City had a little wobble. You mentioned that chance that Varane had. Maybe if that's a striker, it's more of a clear-cut opportunity. I mean, in the second half, really, United haven't really had a chance of no. They've had one really from Marcus Rashford from outside the box, and maybe he should have felt they could hit the target with. At the end of a cup final, you're always going to have to deal with a little bit of spell of pressure when you're chasing the game. But aside from that, really, City have been in complete control. People who maybe haven't watched the game will see the game has ended 2-1 and think, oh, that's quite a tight game. Really, being inside the stadium, watching it on TV, it didn't feel like that type of game at all.
Stevie, just before Varane's chance, a couple of minutes before, a challenge by Fred on Kevin De Bruyne wasn't given by referee Paul Tierney as a penalty. What did you make of that incident?
Well, initially I thought it was a penalty because, in my eyes, Fred made no attempt to go for the ball. He basically went for Kevin De Bruyne, and I think Fred's fortunate that the ball's just about close enough where the referee and the VAR can think that he's trying to shield it. So, look, you can't give a penalty in an FA Cup final unless you really are sure that it's a penalty and it's a foul. And I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say I'm not 100% sure that it is a foul.
Yeah.
My initial reaction was it was, but I'm not sure. And if you're not sure, you can't give it. But he's really, it's right on the edge, because the question for me would be, does the referee think the ball's close enough to Fred that he's shielding it? As I said, the first time I saw it, I didn't think so. But you're not 100%, you can't give it, not in a cup final.
Okay, what turned out to be the winning goal, Rob, was the Kevin De Bruyne corner. And the first goal was the right foot volley, and the second one was a left foot volley. There's one angle, I'm not sure if you've seen it just yet, but it shows David De Gea taking a slight step to his left just before Gundogan hits the volley. And that means he's out of the game. He can't get to it. But you could argue that a goalkeeper in that position, it wasn't as sweetly struck as the opening goal. It's come through a whole lot of bodies. Should David De Gea be doing better for Manchester City's winning goal from Gundogan?
Yeah, I must say that goal happened in our end here, the end of the stadium where the press box is. And I must say, when the shot comes in and goes in the net, you feel immediately that David De Gea should have done better. There is an angle from behind Gundogan where it obviously comes through a lot of bodies. I think Varane tries to charge it down. It goes through his legs or over his leg. So you could possibly say that De Gea is a little bit unsighted. But really, for a volley to go in from that area of the pitch, you really expect it to be quite a clean strike, and it certainly wasn't at all. From our angle, it almost looked like it kind of bobbled inside the post. Obviously, the placement of it was perfect because it did just sort of shave the inside of the post. But I must say, when I was watching it live, I did feel that the David De Gea should have done better. I think the whole situation should have been defended better because Kevin De Bruyne's free kick was also from our side of the press box, and you could see exactly what he was doing. He had two looks at the edge of the box to see where Gundogan was. Yeah. United was so deep in the box that they had no chance of getting out at all. It was pretty obvious, really, that Kevin De Bruyne was going to clip a little free kick to the edge of the box and let someone shoot. And if I can see that in the press box, presumably United's defenders can see that. So, yes, David De Gea probably should have done better, but I think the whole situation, from United's point of view, should have been defended better.
Stevie, as a defender who's played and won an FA Cup finals, would you have hoped that Bruce Grobbelaar, whoever was behind you, would have saved something if that was a similar situation?
I think it would have been a bit harsh on De Gea. Did he take a little step to his left? Well, you know what? If you can't see, then you can't just decide to stay in a position where you can't see the ball. You've got to try and see it as quickly and as early as you can. And he just chose to go to the left-hand side to see it, which meant that there was a little bit more space on the right. I think it's harsh to point a finger at De Gea. The ball goes in the corner. It goes through bodies. I mean, I think that's harsh. I do, however, agree 100%. The ball's not pinged from De Bruyne. This thing's floated 50 yards. And for nobody to react in a red jersey quick enough, that's where the fault lies, in my opinion. Not at De Gea, but defensively. And it's every one of them. Because there's 10 of them that could have read it early and who could have made an attempt to go and close the ball early, and none of them did until it was too late. So, yeah, I'm putting this on the outfield players, not really on De Gea.
Well, look, there's an element of modern day life. It's the blame culture. We're looking for a scapegoat or whatever. Bottom line is, accentuating the positive, it's a left foot volley, having already scored a right foot volley, and he scored twice. And Rob, he's out of contract. In the summer, he's been linked with Arsenal, he's been linked with Barcelona. Supposedly, Pep wants to keep him. Have those two goals basically inked a new deal for Gundogan? And if it is a 2-year deal that he's wanting, he's 32, just give him that?
He's not doing his case any harm at all, because often at the end of the season, City players have been joking that in the run-in, Ilkay Gundogan turns into Prime Zidane, and he's done it again. He did it on the last day of last season, scoring twice against Aston Villa. He scored twice against Leeds, twice against Everton in the running for the Premier League this season, and he scored twice at Wembley, and also almost had a hat-trick and had a goal ruled out through offside. Just in these huge games, Gundogan seems to have that massive influence. And you talk about City having these fantastic players like Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne, Jack Grealish, these really creative players. Ilkay Gundogan, again and again, proves to be the difference in these massive games, and you wouldn't bet against him having another massive contribution against him for next week. Pep Guardiola was already very, very keen to keep Gundogan at the club. It's clear that he wants a longer deal than he's currently being offered at City. He's got a chance to possibly go to Barcelona, possibly go to Arsenal. I think now, even more so, Pep Guardiola and City will be trying absolutely everything to keep Gundogan at this club, because in these huge games, he has a massive, massive impact.
Stevie, there were many games during the season that City were absolutely cruising, and then it got a wee bit nervy towards the end when they let in a goal or two. But after that second goal went in, certainly for me, you just kind of felt that they've got United at arm's length. And as Rob mentioned, there's obviously going to be the send everybody forward at the end, and Varane, I think, hit the bar when McTominay was involved. But did you also get the feeling that when City went ahead, then they were not in cruise control, but they were very comfortable with that lead?
To be honest, I wasn't particularly thinking about City because when you're 2-1 up in the cup final and the clock's getting towards the end of the game, then I don't care how good a team you are, there is a tendency to try and hold on to what you've got and just don't make a mistake. And as I said, I was thinking more about United. I was trying to figure out how are United going to break them down, because I don't remember one bit of play where it involved 2 or 3 players, some passing and moving, and getting in behind or cutting people up. You know, there was no zip or imagination or anything like that coming from United from the first whistle to the last. They put the pressure on, no question, the last 10 minutes, but it's desperation time. You're throwing balls in. And the fact that Varane again was the one that was hit the bar tells you how inept they pretty much were going forward. So no surprise that City got a little deep, but no surprise that Manchester United couldn't really muscle any real football. It was all about winning challenges and winning second balls. And just before Varane hits the bar, I'm pretty sure Ortega makes a really good save from, I think it might have been Shaw, when the ball broke and he comes out, and that's how it ended up at the head of Varane, I think, off the goalkeeper. So again, it was a half chance that came about, not from good football, but just desperation with time running out in a cup final. And so United, they can't really look back in this game and think that they had it and they lost it, because they really never went and grasped it. It really was City's, and City deserved it.
Well, Manchester United had the opportunity to stop City from emulating what United did in 1999 and get the treble, but they now are one step away. Final question to you, Rob. If Manchester City go ahead and beat Inter next Saturday, they get the domestic treble, like Ferguson and Manchester United did in 1999. Is it too early to try and have the conversation and the potential argument about, is Pep better than Fergie? Is Fergie better than Pep? Because if we don't have it, someone else is going to have it. Where would a win next week in the Champions League final and a treble for Manchester City put Pep in the pantheon of legendary managers?
What a question. Does he rival Ferguson? Probably. I mean, Ferguson's genius was in his longevity, that he ended up winning 13 Premier League titles. To do it so well for so long, I think deserves to be in a class of your own. But Pep Guardiola certainly deserves to be in that conversation, that the dominance that Ferguson had with United when he was in charge is being emulated by City and Pep Guardiola now. They've won 5 out of the last 6 Premier League titles. Had been in 2 of the last 3 Champions League finals. They've won the FA Cup today. They've been in the last 4 FA Cup semi-finals. City are the dominant force in English football, and I think victory over Inter next week will confirm their place as the best team in the world at the moment. I think Pep would probably have to go on and win a few more Premier League titles, a few more trophies to really start matching Sir Alex Ferguson's record. But if you talk about genius coaches and the tactics that he's introduced, the way that his teams play, the way that he figures out how to beat teams, he certainly deserves to be in that conversation, and that won't change whether they win or lose against Inter next week. I think Pep Guardiola's already done enough to be a part of that conversation, beating Inter next week and winning another Champions League title, winning City's first Champions League trophy. Will just confirm his place among those great coaches.
Rob Dawson at Wembley, thank you so much. ESPNFC.com for all of Rob's scribings from today. We're going to talk more about next week's Champions League final very shortly. But now I want to bring in Sophie Lawson, because she's also been keeping tabs on the Women's Champions League final in Eindhoven. Barcelona at halftime against Wolfsburg were trailing by 2-0 and in trouble, but they turned it around. What a game you've had today, Sophie, and what a win for Barcelona.
Sorry, I've got some very loud new driving going on right now. Yeah, what a game! What a second half from Barcelona. I think they were they had so many chances in the first half, and you're starting to think maybe it wasn't going to be their day because we had some near misses, but they just kept plugging away and managed to get the goal they needed. And I think maybe a couple of years ago we wouldn't have seen it from Barcelona, but they've gotten to that point of having that mentality to keep going with it.
It's a winner's mentality, isn't it? Because even when you're down by a goal or down by 2 goals as they were at half-time, it's that knowledge that we can get back into this one. Look, the third goal was going to be crucial. They got 3 in 25 minutes, Barcelona. But when you've got that winning mentality, how important is that for a team like Barcelona to believe that you're the best, regardless of where you find yourself at half-time?
It's vital. If you look at the sort of final last year when they had gotten back to being favourites, and they had all the football nous, but when it came down to actually getting over that hump and managing to get the terribly on, it departed them. So they've learned from it. They've learned a lot over the last 2 years winning in Spain, even though they've won quite aggressively in the Spanish league. It builds up that mentality that we seem to lose so often in the Champions League. You've kind of got to have that belief and that little bit of arrogance to see you through it and keep you going. I think they've got to that point, and you pair that with a very, very difficult group, and then I think we might be in that new era of women's football, that new era of new team being strong.
Thank you to Sophie. We're having one or two issues with the quality of the sound, understandably so. But Barcelona winning the Women's Champions League by 3-2 against.
She could have just started singing.
Well, I was going to say you've had many tough opponents in your life. Sophie's, I think, up to this point has to be Neil Diamond now.
You should have just started singing.
But get the arms out like this. Is that what we're going to do? Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to a little bit of normality. I ain't going to sing, and I've heard you maybe do that as well, so I'd advise against that. Champions League final for the men. For the men. I can't sing, I know that. For the men next week. How do Inter stop a Manchester City juggernaut? What can they learn from Manchester United's performance today at Wembley? What they did right, but what they did wrong? And how do you expect them to approach a game against the Manchester City side that they know if City play well, City win? So how do Inter stop them from doing that?
I get the feeling it's going to be Man United in disguise.
Probably.
You know, they're going to. Yeah, I don't think Inter can go toe to toe with Man City the same way that you couldn't expect Man United to try and go toe to toe with Man City in the cup final either. And so it becomes where do you start defending from? You know, I think United. You can agree or disagree with that. United got pushed back by some good play from City, or you can decide that Man United just defended too deeply and couldn't get out. Either way, Inter are probably going to look at what happened and, in my opinion, will defend not as deeply as United did in the first half, but they'll certainly get a line and say, okay, this is where it is, and we're not going any further back. We're going to try and win the ball, and we're going to break. I don't see how they go about it any other way. I think it would be foolish for them to think that they can just go toe-to-toe with City. So it's going to be similar to what United tried to do, except it has to be a better version. And when they do get the ball, then they have to show some quality and some courage and be better with the ball when they actually get it. Unlike Manchester United today. So I think that's how Inter have to go about it. And of course, with what they have going forward and the pace that they have, then if they do it properly, then they can worry Manchester City. But again, there's no question, Man City are firm favourites going into this game, and they will look to try and dominate the way they did the first half. Against Inter the way they did against Man United today. If I'm Inter, the one thing I would look at is, I know it's a cup final, I know you're defending for your lives, but they looked a little sign of some tired legs in City.
Maybe Rodri towards the end, yep.
Yeah, which shouldn't be a surprise. Long season, lots of games, a lot of pressure all the way through the season to win every time you step on the field. So does that play into it? Maybe. I guess all it does is certainly gives Inter a little lift that maybe City might not be quite as sharp as they would like to be.
I think, Stevie, having 7 days between the games, the FA Cup final and the Champions League final, will certainly help City. But it has been a long season. I think it's Manchester United who've only played more than Manchester City this season. That was their 60th game, and next week's going to be their 61st. So Pep Guardiola said, look, he's not thinking about Inter. He's not thinking about the treble because none of that means anything if they don't beat Man United. That's now done. And he said he'll pick his team accordingly, depending on what happens with the FA Cup. You know the side he put out against Real Madrid and against Bayern and against Arsenal in the Premier League. Not too dissimilar from the side today, obviously. There's a change in goal. But could you maybe see, given what we've said about Rodri, could you maybe see a little change in the middle of the park or a little tweak here or there? Because De Bruyne is a wonderful player. I'm not sure he's at 100%. So what do you think he'll do team-wise against Inter next week now that the FA Cup final's over?
Well, I think he no question will look at today and him and his team and his medical team will figure out who maybe might not be 100% physically for the final. I think probably Rodri's not the good example because I don't think there's any way that Rodri doesn't play.
No,
I think we're looking at maybe Gundogan, as good as he was today, scoring 2 goals. You might be looking at him. You might be looking at Silva. Maybe bringing Mahrez in. So there's a couple of little tweaks. I don't think there's going to be wholesale changes, but maybe I think we might see a couple just to freshen it up. And of course, when you have the ability to bring on people like Mahrez and Foden or start them in a Champions League final, it's not like you're weakening the side.
No, not at all.
You're replacing one world class player with another world class player. So I think it'll be the coaching staff and the medical staff will get together and figure out who can go again and who probably can or would be better with one of the other options we have sitting on the bench, just ready.
If Manchester City play with the same intensity as they did against Real Madrid in the second leg of the semi-final, are they unstoppable?
Yes. Yeah, they can't. I don't see anybody able to live with them when they play at the pace they did that they showed us against Real Madrid. When they play with that pace, that intensity you're talking about, and that accuracy in everything they do, whether it's running in behind at the right time or decision making, picking a pass, or the execution of a strike or the execution of a pass, that period against Real Madrid was absolutely. It was out of this world. It was just perfect. And if they can get that right for a period of time and basically kill the game, I don't see anybody able to live with it. I certainly don't think Inter Milan are capable of living with it if City produce it. But at the same time, that's no slight on Inter because, as I said, if City are in that mood and in that vein of form, there's not another team could live with it.
Finally, can they produce that intensity? Taking you back to when you played, you didn't want to any niggles or knocks. You didn't want the manager to know that. You wanted to keep your place in the team. You played 50-odd games in one season as well. It's one more game for City, so there might be tired legs. However, if it's the crux of the team that he normally picks, which we believe it will be in the next 7 days against Inter Milan, that's a possibility that they can keep up that intensity, because if they get things right, they could blow Inter away here, couldn't they?
Well, they could, yeah. And it's a case of, I think there'll be times in the game where they will have that energy and intensity. I think come this late stage of the season, it ain't going to be a 90-minute of perfection. There'll be times where they'll need to get a breath and just keep the ball and stop Inter from being able to hurt them. But there will be times when they'll be at it. And the key for them is when they're at it, taking advantage of it. Had they taken advantage of it today against United, that first 33 minutes and got themselves a couple up, then the game probably would have been done and dusted, regardless of whether they give a penalty away or not. So that's the key for me. There will be occasions in this final against Inter where they will be at it and they will be putting severe pressure on Inter. And if they can take advantage of those situations, then yeah, the game could be over. Yeah.
My thanks to Stevie Nicol, to Rob at Wembley, to Sophie in Eindhoven. Manchester City have won the FA Cup final. They say 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but for City, a treble next week would be perfection. Bye for now.